Nick Sonnenberg, so happy to have you here. So Nick, tell us a little bit about your companies and how long you've been a coach.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good that it's plural at this point, but I have Leverage, which is operational efficiency training. So we help teams and organizations get more efficient by training them on best practices, how to use all the technologies that they use. We have a live events company, Optimize Group.
Wow.
So we'll get small groups together, and Leverage is all about training. This is more brainstorming, problem solving with small groups and in an intimate setting for a couple days. And then I just launched a third company, which is called Alphabet, Alpha-Bet.
Yes.
And that's algorithmic sports betting. So bringing it back to my roots of algorithmic trading in the stock market, but with sports betting.
That's amazing.
So I'm busy. I try to keep myself busy.
Do you sleep?
Not very well.
No, I don't think you do.
Yeah. But I try a lot of techniques to sleep better.
There you go. Awesome.
Custom earplugs. I got it all.
Custom earplugs.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's like one of like a dozen pieces of my repertoire.
There you go. Love it. Okay. And how long have you been a coach?
4 years, but it feels longer because I've known all of you guys so long.
Yeah,
but
you really have.
Yeah.
You're an important part of the community.
Thank you.
Awesome. I love
you
that.
guys.
So what inspires you most about being an entrepreneur? So you had a really interesting career before you were an entrepreneur. What inspires you about being an entrepreneur?
I like the feeling of creating things. Like I find it intellectually stimulating. I like the idea of freedom, you know, and that's ultimately why I first got into entrepreneurship, was this idea that you could have freedom to work with who you want, where you want, on what you want. Now, hasn't been always the case that I've, in a lot of cases, I had less freedom as an entrepreneur than I did when I was a high frequency trader. But it's that feeling that, you know, you have ownership, you're building something, you're making an impact, and you know that there's this light at the end of the tunnel where you're going to have all this freedom and, you know, all this success. But it's a lot of it's really the intellectual stimulation. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. I thought high frequency trading was hard, but I think entrepreneurship's just way harder. What
makes it harder?
Well, with high frequency trading, like I had to be really good at something really specific. And I really loved that. You know, you put on headphones, you're coding, you're doing some complex math, you go really deep, you talk to basically no one all day. With entrepreneurship, at least for me, what's challenging, you have to be very horizontal. I'm finding, like, you have to be a good communicator. Like, a team member has a challenge, you have to be able to address that. You have to understand not just one thing, but you have to be able to talk to marketing and sales and finance and all these things. And then you got to worry about pricing and products. And, you know, I'm all about efficiency, but even more important than efficiency, which I hate to say because it's super important, but like business model and packaging and pricing, like if you don't have that, you're just running fast in the wrong direction. You know, so it's like, rather than being good at what you have to be good at, like 100 things. Right. And there's a lot of responsibility. Like I feel, I think like what my team doesn't realize is the pressure as an entrepreneur. You feel like their livelihood is at stake. If you make a bad decision, like they're affected by it. You know, like you're responsible for the payroll. Like some people have families. Like you screw up, do something wrong, now you can't make payroll. Now, like, do you know what I mean? So there's just high frequency trading. I had a lot of pressure. I was managing, you know, billions of dollars on my portfolio. But this is like, to me, way more pressure because you're on Zoom or you're meeting in person. You know, their lives are in your hands in you know, in some meaningful way.
Which is why so few people are actually entrepreneurs or willing to take the risk to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very small band of the population.
And then there's like always problems. Like even this morning we were dealing with like problems and it's just like, ugh, this isn't, you know? So you have to have a high pain tolerance. I think ultimately that's my unique ability, is I'm a good sufferer.
Interesting. That's a whole other take. Could you be anything else at this point though? Could you be anything other than an entrepreneur?
You know, even as a high frequency trader, I was like an intrapreneur, you know, because they pretty much like, hey, you can manage this much money, and as long as you're making money, you can do whatever you want. So, you know, you're managing a P&L. So in that respect, I've always kind of feel like I've been an entrepreneur. Yeah, I could see myself. I always want to be entrepreneurial. I don't need to be the entrepreneur.
Right.
You know, I could see myself, you know, I've had conversations over the years, like some big companies, like we were in discussions like, hey, maybe you should be the COO of this company. So,
Right.
I think it would be difficult, but I think that as long as I'm in an environment where it's an entrepreneurial environment, I don't necessarily need to be the entrepreneur.
Right.
But it would have to be a unique, special circumstance.
I can see that. Let's touch again on what you said about intellectually challenging, because I know you've got a busy brain, a smart brain. So what do you find most intellectually interesting about being an entrepreneur?
It's just so hard. like just figuring out, like, right now, like, so at Leverage, we have these training programs, right? We have an Inbox Zero program, because what we found was everyone, you could be using Slack, maybe you're not using Slack, maybe you're using Asana, all these different tools that people use, but you may or may not be using those, but you're definitely using Gmail or Outlook, right? So we've got this Inbox Zero program, easy win, let us save you 5 hours or so a week, and then we've got all these other trainings. And just the process of figuring out how to deliver, you get, when you sign up, you get courses and you get live events, right? Now, sounds, you know, on the surface, it sounds simple. Under the hood, what tools do we use? Do we want to add it directly on their calendar or not? Is it a 30-day program and they can access all the trainings and course for 30 days, or do we do it cohort-based? If it's cohort-based, there's all these different impacts. Like if you go here, then like that's going to impact all these other things. So I don't know. There's a lot of complexity with it, which both can be frustrating, but also intellectually stimulating to, like, I don't know. I like that feeling of like building like a well-oiled machine or like a mousetrap and like getting it all to work. But yeah, it's complex. Like even getting to the point, because like over the years, we do tons of calls, so we've thrown a lot of stuff against the wall to see what sticks. You know, we've done work with massive Fortune 10 companies. We've done stuff with entrepreneurs. Just figuring out to build the programs in this way we've had the content and the IP, but repackaging it in that way took a lot of effort. And on one hand, sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, what are we supposed to do? But then it's intellectually stimulating when that light bulb goes off and it clicks. You're like, it's just such a good feeling when you start feeling like, hey, we can now like really just blow up. You know, and I think it's that feeling of momentum that's important to keep the entrepreneur going.
I like that. It reminds me of this slide that Joe put up. I won't swear, but it's like, oh darn. And they get, oh great. Hell yeah. And then you've got, oh darn, oh darn, oh darn, oh darn. It's like these moments of bliss where it actually hits, surrounded by a lot of complexity.
Yeah, my team probably thinks I'm bipolar, but it's just being an entrepreneur.
That's a really, really good point. So one of the things that we believe in, and I think everyone else here does too, is that entrepreneurs are really the driving force for change, right? Is that something that makes sense to you? I mean, you like to hang out in this company as well. And how do you see entrepreneurs impacting economics, future? Take your pick.
Yeah, I think that without entrepreneurs, like there's like no economy basically, right? It's like from car washes to store, like all the disruption starts there, right? Like big companies don't just magically appear. It starts as a startup. You know, or a small business, and then it grows. So, you know, the world needs entrepreneurs.
100%. And how do you like to help entrepreneurs? What's your passion in terms? You've talked about organizational efficiency, for example.
Yeah, I think that. Well, at this point, I've made so many mistakes that I bring a lot to the table. Like I can identify, like, you're gonna go down a path of pain here if you keep doing that.
Don't do that.
It's really gratifying. You know, a lot of people have come up to the booth here. By the way, congratulations on a great event.
Thank you.
So, you know, we're happy to be a sponsor at your first one. It's super gratifying for people to come up to the booth and say they read my book and it's like changed their life. Or it's a great feeling to know that, you know, because of something that you built, it's positively impacted someone. So that's just a good feeling. The operational efficiency stuff is interesting. I like when, you know, in the workshops that we do, that's what I get. Personally, that's what I like the most, because people can come with some random things or like a really complex process. And it's not like we can build some defined content for that. You know, there's a bazillion out of the box types of solutions. And I like the problem solving. Ultimately, I love problem solving.
Yeah.
So I love the events that we throw where people come with some weird problems, and it's not always efficiency problems. And I'm not always the one to answer it. I find we curate a really interesting group of people. So I love to hear what other people have to say, you know, and see their out of the box thinking.
It strikes me that, I mean, you love solving complex problems. Entrepreneurs love solving problems, right? It's just this, and you're really great at creating an ecosystem for helping people, like in your events, pull that together and kind of put a genius network together of your own. And then also making people more efficient so they can tackle the problems that they want to solve, right? So talk a little bit more about operational efficiency, because inbox zero is one thing, but where else do people get bogged down? And I know, because I love to coach entrepreneurs and teams, team members love your book.
Thank you.
So talk a little bit about Come Up for Air, because I think that the CPR framework that you innovated and illustrated in that book is mind-blowing. You know, I've loved it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, you had a big impact on the book too. Like all of our brainstorming has really shaped a lot of my thinking.
Yay.
Well, I'll give you the genesis, right? Because I didn't just like one day start by wanting to be operational efficient. That wasn't like when I was in high school. I was like, hey, yeah, all the stuff that I built has been built off of pain and like being an engineer by background. When I see a problem, like I can't help myself but try to fix it. But I had a business partner breakup years ago, and you know my story quite well, and you know him. But one day he picks up and leaves, and even though we were growing fast and we were doing 7 figures in our first year, under the hood everything was broken, and we were losing over $500,000 a year with almost $1 million in debt.
Ouch.
So when he left and no one knew who I was, I inherited this broken business with 150 team members, and we were good at some parts of efficiency, like we had automated some stuff, but it was a complete shit show. And you know, as an entrepreneur, like you have to balance putting your foot on the gas and optimizing revenue, and then like investing in some foundational things that are long-term investments where operational efficiency comes in. Usually people make the mistake of going 100% revenue growth and they completely neglect this part. And to a certain degree, we were doing that.
Yeah.
So when the disaster happens and you don't have that, then you're just a full-time firefighter. You're not an entrepreneur. So like, you know, I was a full-time firefighter, and like there's only so many hours in a day you can firefight. Yeah. You know, which no one likes being a firefighter because you're not adding any long-term value to the business. You're just putting constant Band-Aids on things. And there's only so many hours a day you can firefight. Like after 16 hours, you got to get some rest, right? One day I stopped to really, really deeply just think like, how do we stop this firefighting? Because I couldn't actually solve the foundational issues that we had. Like we had systemic issues that needed to be addressed, but I had no time to even think about how to address it when a team member has an issue, a client wants to cancel. Like you have to process those before you could invest in optimizing process. So when I sat down and analyzed where I'm spending the most time or where all the time is going, there are these 3 buckets. The first and the biggest bucket was communication. But before you got any work done, just responding to email and Slack messages was like over half the day. Like, and some days it was like 8 hours, like when it was real peak pain. So I was like, I need to solve this communication problem because the nonstop pings and dings, it's impossible to get any meaningful work done. So that was the C of CPR. That was the genesis of the C. Then I realized I couldn't just click a button and know who's working on what. So not just efficiency and time wasting, but accountability. If you're delegating work to dozens of people, like high frequency delegation, how do you know like what you've asked someone to do? How can you hold them accountable? I wanted to be able to click a button and know like, what's Jessica working on? What did I ask her to work on that didn't get done? What's the status of the project for getting our booth together for CoachCon? So I knew that planning, I call it planning in the book, That's the P of CPR. I knew that we needed to focus on that. And
Yeah.
there's different tools for each of these things. There's different tools for internal communication versus external, different tools for this planning, right? We use Asana for that. And then the resources, the R of CPR, is all about documenting your knowledge. And we were already pretty good at that, but had I not have been documenting knowledge, we would have for sure gone bankrupt. But the benefits of that are, one, all these things are interrelated, because the better you document stuff, the more people can self-serve, the less questions they're asking in communication tools, right? The more you document, the less risk you have that if someone leaves, all the IP leaves with them, right? And then you have to reinvent the wheel. So there's these 3 buckets, different tools for these buckets. And then I had like kind of the light bulb, like, hey, this is actually like a really robust framework, and there's all these new tools no one's ever been taught when and how to use them. And while things started turning around very quickly at Leverage, and then people like Tony Robbins and other people reached out asking me to consult them. And CPR not just turned my company around, but it was helpful to people like Tony. We worked with Poopery, I worked with cryptocurrencies. It was helpful for everyone. So then that started getting us thinking, like, maybe we should pivot away from what we were doing and just focus on getting this out there and helping teams with it. And so that's why I wrote the book. And pivoted to what we do now, which is training on all these different tools. And it's not just, hey, click this button to do this, but it's, what's the purpose of this tool? When should you not use the tool? Basic scenarios, like if you need Linda to write a blog post by Friday, you could do it in text, you could do it in email, you could do it in Slack, you could ask her in Asana. But what's the best? And ultimately, most important is not the tool, but that your team's aligned, that they all would answer that question the same. And an example I use in the book is, if you, taking a step back, a problem that people have is not just that they all would answer that problem differently, but everyone's incentivized to just move as fast as possible for themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so when individuals are just trying to get stuff off their plate, usually text or email is the fastest for them.
Right.
But when everyone's just doing whatever's best for him or herself in the moment, it creates this scavenger hunt, and then it becomes really hard to find things in the future. And so the underlying principle of the book is, if you want to be a high-performing organization, you flip the mindset from individuals optimizing to send stuff fast to, as an organization, you want everyone to be able to find stuff fast. So you want everyone to take pause and put it in the right bucket.
Right. That's really one of the questions I want to ask you is, what's the mindset shift
That's the mindset.
required? Yeah. So say that again. So instead of just
Optimizing to send stuff fast, you
Right.
optimize to find stuff fast. So, which means, and it's counterintuitive, because like if you're busy and you want to leave because you want to go to dinner with your family, taking an extra 5 or 10 seconds to put something in the task and the project, et cetera, is annoying. But if you make that commitment, and everyone on your team is doing that for each other, what goes around comes around. So the fact that your team is now putting things in organized places, it's faster for you to find what you're looking for. You don't need to ask them, and not just asking, which takes away their attention and takes away their time. And we know from books like Deep Work, if someone's in a flow state and you ping them, it's like 15 minutes to get back in.
Totally.
But there's also a lag. Like, it might take someone a couple hours to get back to you, versus if you know where to look, you get it instantly. So this idea of optimizing for retrieval instead of transfer is the central underlying principle that I think is unique to kind of what we've come up with at Leverage. And all of our trainings, no matter tool, are we optimizing for retrieval this way? That's like the main thing that we're always going about teaching any tool.
I find that fascinating, because as you're moving fast, hopefully not breaking things, but as you're moving fast in a business and everyone's really trying to do their best, and so it feels fast, but ultimately what I'm hearing you say is it actually really slows things down. And having been victim to the scavenger hunt and been that person who says, hey, can you help me find this? I know you sent it to me, I can never find anything in email. No, I talked to my support partner, Katrina. She can find it in 10 seconds or less. And I'm like, I've looked for an hour and it's missing. And that's expensive. I'm wasting my time that way. So it's
an energy suck for you, right? Like after that hour, you're not in like a great mental place.
I'm grumpy.
Yeah.
This is not good. So this is a big danger. You talked about seeing, under the hood for your own business and then helping other people. So this is a real danger for people, and they know it. Like they're like, thank God no one's looking behind the curtain because it's messy, right?
Well, it's one of the quickest ways to increase profit. Like people hire, oftentimes when I talk to people, it's like, well, what do you need? It's like, we just need to hire people. We're completely overstretched. We just need to hire people. It's like the knee-jerk reaction to solving the capacity problem is hiring people. And my belief is hiring should be a last resort, not a first resort.
Okay.
And we see that very quickly people can gain 20 to 50% productivity per person.
Wow.
Like it's
20 to 50%.
like 20% is like within a month, like we're getting people 20% more. But like some people are so inefficient, like we're doubling productivity of their team. And like imagine what your company looks like if all of a sudden you don't have to hire more people, you could just get more productivity.
Yeah.
Or you could cut the bottom half and just double the productivity of the top half.
That'd be amazing.
Right? You save money on all the recruiting, onboarding, training, salary, and every person you hire, it's exponentially harder to manage that team.
Exactly.
Right.
More complexity.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more, tell them the name of your book.
So my book is Come Up for Air. We have a website for that, comeupforair.com, with additional bonuses.
Okay.
Leverage, the training platform, if people want to learn more about getting help learning how to best use all these tools and gain efficiency, that's getleverage.com.
Yep.
And at CoachCon, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we have coachcon.getleverage.com is our URL for our special $900 off the Inbox Zero program.
Wow, that's amazing. Nick, thank you. I really appreciate how you've taken a complexity for entrepreneurs that most people avoid. They'd rather hire people than do a deep dive, and you have such expertise and you've applied your amazing engineer brain to solving problems that most other people haven't. So
I appreciate it. It's a never-ending journey. There's a million inefficiencies at Leverage, and every day we're getting smarter too, and these tools change all the time. So it's an ever-evolving thing, and you can never get too efficient.
it's a great way to end. Thank you.
Yeah.